Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's video I have my mid-September wrap-up. I'm actually going to do this in two parts, which I don't normally do because I ended up reading 16 books in the first half of the month. So this would be probably like half an hour long if I actually just did it all in one shot. So I'm going to do 8 books in this video, and then there will be a part 2 with the other 8, which will be out shortly after this one. So let's get into the books. So the first book I read was Bad Boy Blues by Saffron. This is a bully romance. This is the second book I've read by this author. I didn't love the first one I read, mostly just because of some of her word choices were not my favorite. And so I was a little worried that the same thing would happen with this book, but thankfully it did not. So I actually gave this one 4 stars. I did enjoy it. It is, I don't know if I said this, it's a bully romance. It's very similar to Vicious by L.J. Shen, where the girl is sort of like a maid at this, I don't want to say, I mean, maybe it's like a castle, I guess, kind of. It's like this like property that she's like a maid at, and her high school bully shows up and he's like moving back in, and so now he's there again, and they are a little bit older, they're out of high school, and so I thought that was a sort of interesting aspect. I kind of prefer bully romances when they're not in high school because I just think it's more believable. And so he basically moves back and is kind of a jerk to her and goes from there. It was, like I said, it was pretty good for what it was. It wasn't anything super amazing or memorable or anything, but it was a pretty good read. Next was Shame by Fiona. This one I've seen around a lot. It was like pretty controversial when it came out. I remember a lot of people were talking about this one because it deals with high schoolers who are basically exploring kinks together, and people were like sort of iffy about the fact that they were 17 and they were like high school kids in this book instead of like adults. But honestly, this book has a time jump pretty quick into it, I think, and so there's really not much of the book where they're actually 17, and the stuff they're doing is not that crazy. Like it's not what you're imagining, I think. And so it was pretty chill for all of the controversy this was getting. I didn't find it was anything super outrageous. I think I gave this 3.5, maybe 4 stars. I was sort of surprised how tame this was compared to, you know, like what a lot of people were complaining about with this book. I didn't find that any of that was an issue. And I mean, if you think that's going to be an issue for you, obviously don't read this. But like I said, there's a time jump and they're older for most of the book, so it wasn't like a big deal or anything. And I thought it was interesting. It's definitely a more unique book, which I thought was kind of cool. So that's why I gave it 4 stars or 3.5 stars. I honestly can't remember how I rate these books by the time I come to film these wrap-ups, but I did think it was good. It wasn't anything like super crazy or controversial or like anything that should have been controversial, but whatever. This next book I feel like I have a lot to say about. The next book I read was Long Way Down by Krista and Becca Ritchie. This is the last sort of actual book in the Addicted Calloway Sisters series. The epilogue book obviously still comes after this, but this is like the last sort of full book, I guess, in the series. I have said a couple times on my channel when I mention these books that I've mentioned that I'm not gonna talk about them too much because I'm filming a reading vlog. I decided after finishing this book that I am going to scrap that reading vlog. I am not going to edit it or upload it because I'm not happy with it. I think my opinions on this series changed a lot as I was reading it, and I think at the beginning I felt sort of pressured to say that I was loving every book because everybody else has loved them, and in reality that's just not really where I feel like I am with this series. I finished this one in 3 days, and the only reason that happened was my whole family got COVID except for me, and so I was like trapped in my room and had nothing else to do. So I read this book in 2 days, but I was literally forcing myself to read this every time I picked it up. It wasn't like something I wanted to read or that I wanted to pick up. I just felt like I had to finish this series, so I kept picking it up. I gave it 4 stars, but honestly, even that, looking back, I feel like I want to change all my ratings for the books in this series. I honestly think the only one that I would keep at 5 stars is the first one, and everything else I would say is either 3 or 4 stars. And this one was just way too long. It's the longest one in the series, and it's 750 pages, which is insane. And I just feel like I was getting to the point where I was getting tired of the books. There's like a note from the author or something in the beginning of this book that basically says like, oh, we know these books are character driven and you know, like there's a lot of pages in this book, but we hope you think it's justified or something like that. And I feel like that they had to put that in there just tells you this book is way too long for no reason. They knew it and they published it anyway, and I just didn't care. By the time I got to the end of this, I think there's no plot in these books, and I think you can have the best characters in the world, but why do we have to give up a plot to have that? Like, I just feel like we shouldn't have to do that. And at this point, all the couples are together. I don't care anymore. I really don't. I'm in the middle of the last epilogue book, Some Kind of Perfect, and honestly, every chapter that I start, I want to DNF it. And the only reason I'm pushing myself through it is I think I might like the Like Us series, but I don't know at this point. Like, they're just so long, and this last one is so boring that I honestly, I don't know. I will update you on that in my like final September wrap up, because I'm sure I'll be done it by then, or I'll have DNF'd it, who knows. I may just give up on the whole thing, but the series turned out to not be what I was expecting. So like I said, I gave this one 4 stars at the time. I don't know that I would keep that rating at this point, because I feel like I was rating them higher because I wanted to love them so badly, but I'm just not. And so instead of the reading vlog, I'm gonna do like a review video, for one for the Addicted series and one for the Calorie Sister series. Those will go up in December, because I think I'm actually going to attempt Bookmas this year, so those will be a part of that. And so you will eventually get my full thoughts and opinions on the series at that point. But this was the one I finished so far this month. It was okay. Like I said, I don't really know where I stand on my ratings at this point, because I just feel like they're so long, and I can't believe someone actually wrote 10 books with no plot, but here we are. So I read that one, and this one is actually what spurred on all of my reading this month. I read a lot this month, obviously, so far, and I think it was finishing this book kind of like lifted a weight off of me in a way, where I kind of felt like, oh my gosh, like I'm done the 700-page book, like I can actually read other stuff. And I was getting through like these 200- and 300-page books so quickly that it was just like exciting to get a whole story in 200 or 300 pages after that. So I really just kind of like went at it and was like reading everything I could get my hands on. So the next book I read was From the Jump by Lacie Waldon. This is by the author of The Layover, which if you've been on my channel, you've probably heard me recommend that because it's one of my favorite books. Really love that one. This one is similar to that one in that it is sort of a travel-themed book. This one is a friends to lovers romance. It follows a girl who is very focused on her career, and she is always saying yes to the people at her office. She's trying to sort of climb the ladder, and anytime they ask her to do anything, she's like, of course, like I'll definitely do that. And her college friends go on this vacation every year, and she's always turning them down because she doesn't want to miss anything at work or anything like that. And so her friends this year have gone to South Africa. And she's sitting in the office one day and she kind of has a moment of like, what am I doing with my life? And she ends up just kind of walking out of her job and being like, yeah, I'm out of here, kind of thing. And she ends up deciding she's going to fly to South Africa and join her friends on this trip. And one of the friends on this trip is a guy that she's obviously known since college, and they're really good friends, and they kind of get thrown together in this book. I will say a lot less of this book takes place in South Africa than you would think. I think they're already back from South Africa by like the 40 or 50% mark, and so most of it is actually them being home. It's not so much travel focused, which was sort of disappointing for me because I thought it was going to be sort of set on the backdrop of this vacation they were on, and it just wasn't really like that. I gave this one 4 stars. I did really still enjoy it, but it was just different than what I was expecting. Next was Sins of Sevin by Penelope. This one was okay. I think this was like a solid 3-star book through most of it, but the ending I had to bump it down to 2 stars because I just didn't like what happened at the end. This one follows a guy whose dad marries a woman who is super, super religious. His mom has passed away and he's now remarrying, and he is sort of raised super religious because of this woman that comes in, and so he's at church all the time and whatever, and then his dad ends up dying, and a couple, I don't know, weeks or maybe like a month after his dad dies, this guy shows up and is like, hey, before your dad died, we were talking about you marrying one of my daughters and taking over my family business. And this guy is kind of like, okay, like I didn't hear anything about this, but like I don't really have anywhere to go or anything to do, so like what the heck. And so he meets with one of this guy's daughters, and he's like, yeah, okay, I could marry her, like I'll go take over the business, whatever. And he ends up, he's on his way to their house, he's like moving to the town that they're in, and he runs into this girl's sister, and he is like immediately like interested in her and thinks she's like really interesting and whatever. And obviously it's the girl's sister, but he doesn't know that at the time, and he ends up kind of living with all of them. And obviously he's supposed to be with this one sister, but he has feelings for the other sister. And it was good up until, like I said, I didn't love the ending or the things that happened and how it played out, but the rest of it was okay, I guess. It just, like, to me this screamed like early, like 2012, maybe new adult. I don't know when this book was published, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was in that sort of ballpark area, because it just gave me those vibes. Next was Hating You by J.L. Beck and C. Hallman. This was like a really random one that I just picked up one day. This is another bully romance. It is a university set one, which I really like. Like I said before, I sort of like my bully romances out of high school. I feel like they're more believable, and especially this one was one of the ones where the guy has all the power on the campus, and I always find it hard to believe that like a 16-year-old is like scaring adults in the way that they usually are in these books. But because they were older in this one and the guy's dad is like a huge donor to the university, it just like made a little more sense to me. And in this one, there is a girl who's at this university and she runs into this guy, and her sister has essentially accused this guy's brother of raping her. And this girl has testified in the trial and said like, yeah, I saw him leaving the room, like it was for sure him, like I know it was him, kind of thing. And so this guy's brother hates her and is just like, I'm gonna ruin your life because you took my brother away from me and he didn't do it and blah blah blah. And so he starts kind of going after her and just like bullying her, obviously, and things go from there. This is the first in the series, but a lot of bully romances I find are series that focus on one couple, but this one I believe every book is a different couple, so I may continue on with the series, not 100% sure. And so I thought that was interesting because, like I said, they're usually about the same couple, so I thought that was kind of cool. I gave this one 4 stars. It was pretty much everything I'm looking for in a bully romance. It didn't have that like extra little thing to make it 5 stars, but it did deliver what I was looking for, so I really enjoyed this one. Next was Puck Me Secretly by Odette Stone. This is the first in the Vancouver Wolves hockey series, and I've been really liking this series so far. This one, like I said, is the first. I've seen a lot of good things about this one. I gave it 4 stars, and this one follows a girl who's on a plane and it crashes, and as they're crashing, she's sort of blurting out all this stuff to the guy beside her, and they end up sort of being together when the plane crashes and also through the night and the next day, because they sort of take everyone from this plane to the same hotel, and so they're kind of around each other. And so they are seeing each other, but they don't really know who each other is. But then she is flying to Vancouver to basically intern with her dad, who owns this Vancouver hockey team, and the guy is a new player for the team, so he's on his way there to join the team. And they don't know that about each other, and so when she shows up for the job the first day, he's there and she's kind of like, whoa, what the heck, like I didn't think I'd see this guy again. And so they're kind of keeping it like secret that they know each other. I mean, I love a good hockey romance, so this one was one that I really enjoyed and thought was interesting. It didn't really have anything like particularly unique about it, but I thought the characters were like written well enough that I didn't mind that it was repeating things that I read before. So I did enjoy this one. And lastly for this video is Go Hex Yourself by Jessica Clare. I absolutely loved this book. I gave it 5 stars. I was not expecting to love it. For some reason I thought this was YA. It's not. This is very much almost like what I wanted from the X-Hex, but the X-Hex didn't quite deliver. It's very like Halloween Town reminiscent. It's very Halloween vibes, you know. It follows a girl who is broke and ends up applying for this job she sees in the newspaper, and she thinks it's for something to do with like a card game that she plays that's sort of like the book equivalent of Magic the Gathering, I think. It's called like spellcasting something, and she thinks that that's what this job is for, that she is applying to work on these cards or like do something within the company for this game. And she's like really excited about it because she's obsessed with the game and she plays it with her roommate all the time, and she's just really excited about it. And she goes in, and there's this woman who is leading her around this house, and she's like, okay, why am I in a house instead of an office? Like, this is sort of weird. And the woman is like, oh yeah, like, you'll need to know all of this if you want to be her familiar and blah blah blah. And she's just kind of like, okay, like, these people are a little nuts, but like, maybe like they pay good, like, I need the money kind of thing. And she ends up finding out that this woman is the familiar of this really old witch, and she just kind of thinks like, oh, it's like an old lady who thinks she's a witch, like, that's so sad, but like, I'll stick around and help her like do her dishes and whatever. And so she takes the job because they offer her like a ton of money for it, and she's like, oh, of course, like, I can like pretend she's a witch, like, that's fine. And this woman's nephew is also around all the time, and he can't stand the girl at the beginning. He just like wants her gone, doesn't think she should be there. He hates that she keeps mocking like magic and saying that everything's stupid, and he's just like, okay, like, someday you're gonna realize it's all real. And she's like, nope, not a chance. But he was just so sweet in the end, and I really love this one. Like I said, this one gave me sort of what I wanted from the X-Hex but didn't quite get. I felt like this one really delivered on that. There's a second book coming out in, I think, January or April of next year. Can't remember which one. But I really am excited for that one because it's sort of hinted at the end of this one as well. And like I said, I just really loved it. It's a really good, like, spooky season, like, Halloween vibe book if you're looking for that. And I really enjoyed it. Obviously, I gave it 5 stars. So anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below. I do new book videos every single week, and I'll see you next time.